Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to give it another minute to let some more people enter the party, and then we'll get started. Okay, so why don't we get started? Thank you, everyone, for joining us for our data-driven financial planning for 2021 webinar today. But instead of a classic webinar, we're going to make this more of a fireside chat. And we have representation from New Relic and Fivetran. So if you want to change the slide there. So just as a quick intro, my name is Kira Rafferty. I lead customer marketing here at Fivetran, and I will be moderating the conversation today between the lovely Carmen Seep and Erik Jones. So if you two would like to introduce yourselves, that'd be great.
My name is Carmen Seep, and I head up our global revenue operations team here at Fivetran. Excited to spend some time with you all today talking about one of my favorite topics, data-driven anything.
And Erik Jones, Director of Product Management and Analytics at New Relic. Also very excited to be talking about financial planning because getting into financial analytics and consumption-based pricing is something that New Relic and a lot of companies of similar ilk are doing, and it's been a journey for us and looking forward to sharing some findings that we've had.
Great. So just real quick, some of the topics that we'll cover. So we're just going to talk about the modern data stack really quickly, hit on kind of, the data stack and the tools that are impacting our financial analysis. We'll go into wrapping up 2020. So kind of taking those learnings from 2020 and seeing how we can apply those to the new year. We'll talk about planning for 2021. So how are we improving our processes and taking those challenges and applying them to the future and kind of like predicting the trends that we'll see going forward. And then we'll go into best practices and advice. So kind of helping you ensure that the entire organization understands finance analytics and just what that means in terms of broader impact. And of course, we'll end on a Q&A. So as we go through this presentation, please feel free to drop any questions that you have into the questions box on the GoToWebinar panel, and we'll make sure to address those at the end. Great. So first, when we talk about utilizing the modern data stack, the first question I have for both of you is, how has a modern data stack helped you improve financial analysis compared to the methods that you had from your past? So Erik, if you want to start us off there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in general, what a modern tech stack has allowed us to do is not have tooling and technology be a roadblock to the types of analyses or information or data that we want to get at. In previous companies and in previous times when I haven't had a modern tech stack, tooling has been a roadblock to enablement for an organization. It's been a roadblock to the type and amount of data that we want to be able to have access to. But with a more modern tech stack, those roadblocks have been removed, which allows us as analysts to do the job that we really want to do. So we use Snowflake as our data warehouse. We use Fivetran to supplement our data engineering team to load data into Snowflake, our warehouse. And then we have a couple of visualization tools that we use at New Relic. We have Tableau. We also use Periscope. I've used Looker in the past at previous organizations. But each one of those tools, again, didn't exist 10 years ago. And with each one having a specific purpose to allow an analyst or an analytics team to be able to do the job they want to do while not having to worry about managing pipelines or how do you scale visualization and sharing data. It's really opened up enablement for us by using more modern technologies.
Nice. Carmen, do you have anything to add to that?
I think we've all related to the world of Excel spreadsheets. Excel spreadsheets used to be the way, and in some cases still is the way that a lot of people do financial planning. Nothing wrong with that, but by working with the modern data tech stack, we've been able to get disparate data into a centralized location and then have it actually tell a story and have it make sense. And a lot of that has been missing, and especially as our business has gotten more complex, when you move to a usage model versus a bookings model, usage is just is more complex just by nature. And so by having these different tools in place, it's really allowed us to evaluate it in a very different framework and a very different view. Where we had blind spots before, now we have clarity and we're able to make decisions based off of that have been very high impact to our business and have been able to, I think, accelerate us faster than others have been, and allowed us to be that unicorn this year that so many folks are really driving towards, but we wouldn't have been able to get there without the knowledge and utilizing the tools that we have in place.
Yeah. So you mentioned, Erik, Tableau and Looker and all these other tools that we have in the modern data stack. But in terms of maybe other tools, some of those applications or sources, what tools are you using to kind of grow your company or that you really rely on?
Yeah, we are, so we're a software as a service company. So we rely a lot on Salesforce. We use Zora as a revenue recognition system, Marketo and Intercom for email campaigns. And I think picking up on a point that Carmen made, what we've been able to do at New Relic that, again, I haven't been able to do in previous teams is take financial analysis, which has typically been done in a silo, where Carmen mentioned you can tell a story now. Financial analysis, when it's in a spreadsheet, you can say if revenue went up or down. You can see what the time series looks like over time. When you start bringing in and combining data from these other applications that we use, you can start to tell the story that revenue went up and down because we saw customers where revenue went down tended to use our product less before revenue went down. So we're using our product engagement data that we collect through Segment, and then bringing everything in together into Snowflake and being able to merge different data sources to create that holistic story. We have renewal dates from Salesforce, so we can do segmentation. We can run targeted campaigns around renewals that are coming up based off of revenue size or based off of a split of revenue size and how much engagement they've had with the product. So the different applications that we're using can now be linked with financial data to create that holistic customer picture that we haven't had before.
Yeah, nice. And Carmen?
We're a Salesforce shop, so we use Salesforce pretty much across the board. NetSuite, we're also use Marketo, and we've got various other tools that we use just to help us get smarter in the marketplace. One of the tools that, one of the big pain points for us outside of moving to a usage model in 2020 was our attribution model. So I don't know if that's a pain point for other folks out in the world, but it has been a pain point for us because we are a multi-point attribution model and we were working off of a single point attribution model, which wasn't necessarily working out for us. And as you do financial planning, being able to accurately attribute to each one of your lead sources is highly critical. And so being able to get a software into place to help us with that. So we now use Visible for that. And then we also use Clary, which is, we brought it in to help us with our performance management and our op management. So the combination of all of those, again, paints that story for us, a little bit fuller picture on where our opportunity is, where our business is coming from, and how we can optimize to meet our revenue targets, but also make sure that we're putting the right resources into the right revenue. So if we're getting lower revenue through some customers, let's not put all of our resources into the same amount of resources into that revenue as we would for our higher volume, our higher impact customers. So lots of goodness going on.
Definitely. Great. So we've talked kind of like that tech stack, the tooling. So let's move on to wrapping up 2020 and kind of what that looks like. 2020 was a weird year. We all know it. So I think wrapping it up might be a little different as well. So I think to start there, like what were some of the critical data sets or sources? I mean, we just listed a bunch, so there might be a little bit of overlap, but some of the critical data sets or sources that you used to wrap up 2020.
Yeah, we had a lot of key learnings out of 2020, again, because we made the decision to go off of a bookings model and into a consumption-based or a usage model, both from a revenue recognition, but also from a pricing perspective. And when we made that shift, we made a couple of really interesting key learnings. One of them was how it impacts our existing customers. So we realized that we should have potentially spent a little bit more time before we made all these changes in understanding and looking at the data and how it would impact our existing customer base. So that was the key learning one out of it. The second key learning that I can share with the team that was also tied to data was just the impact. We didn't really understand what usage, the usage patterns that our customers had before we made that transition. So our analytics weren't set up to really capture all of the nuances and all of the complications that go along with the usage side of the equation. So what we are actively trying to do right now is understand that, build out all of the data insights and infrastructure that we need in order to capture that. And a big part of that is churn. So when you talk about churn, it can either be a retention, either logo retention or dollar retention. And our key learning was understanding our dollar retention. So what happened with our customers, which caused our usage to vary on a month-to-month or quarter-by-quarter basis. And so just really unpacking that was another key learning out of 2020. So I would say that 2020 was our year of implementing and some key learnings. 2021 is going to be about learning quickly and optimizing.
Nice. Erik?
Yeah, a very similar story as you just told, Carmen, that we've been going through at New Relic as well. In the end of July, we also switched our pricing model from subscription-based or bookings-based to consumption-based. And I don't think we fully understood what that meant. So again, it's 2020 for us was a year of implementation. And at least at New Relic, whatever we had built for the old pricing model, whether it was our analytic infrastructure, how we recognize revenue, how we forecast revenue, how we plan territories, and what our sales strategy is, that completely changed when we switched to our pricing model. We had to build not our entire analytics infrastructure, but most of it from scratch. Because when you're used to having tables or views that are useful from a subscription perspective, now you have to go find, well, how are we recognizing consumption from our product production cloud? And how are we charging customers based off of their consumption? So we've had to rebuild our view of our customer base as we go from an install base to a consumption base. We go from something that's relatively not easy, but something that's more straightforward to forecast in annual commits to now a revenue pipeline that's variable month to month because it's based off of consumption. And that meant, to be honest, a scramble for all of our analytics teams at New Relic to understand what data sources should we be using as our source of truth. What are the most useful metrics to report on? Carmen mentioned churn. We're going through that process right now where we're trying to define, is churn someone who doesn't pay us in consecutive months, but they might pay us every other month because they go in and out of our free tier that we have in our pricing model. So how do we define these metrics in a consumption world that we didn't have to define before? And once they're defined, how do we get the data? And how do we manipulate and transform the data so we have useful reporting, useful modeling, useful planning going forward? So it's very much the same story. And that 2020 was a year of implementation for us. It necessitated an agility in what we're able to do because everything changed. And it also forced us to act in more of an iterative way, because what we might understand day one is not actually the truth, and we learn a better truth or a less inaccurate truth on day 10, and then an even less inaccurate truth on day 20. So we needed to really flex our agility muscles to be able to keep up with the pace of change, keep up with the decisions our business had to make, and also redefine how we looked at our business in the first place.
Yeah, that's a lot. I think that you guys are giving really great advice where people are probably starting to consider these sorts of things too, and questions that they might not have thought of, or even just points. And Eric, you're saying definition of churn. I think that's things that people don't necessarily think that they should be thinking about maybe as they go try to implement these things. Great. So maybe we move on to 2021 planning. So we're wrapping up 2020, we're moving into 2021. So how are you kind of bringing your learnings from 2020 into 2021? And I guess kind of in line with that, what are like those key steps in your processes for 2021 planning? And that could be like within finance or within the greater organization, kind of like how that all works together and how you work across teams.
I think for us, 2021, we are specifically building in collaboration and cross-functional steps where they might not have needed to exist before. An example of that would be forecasting. Is that forecasting 2020, 2019, and before was an exercise that our finance group and FP&A group could comfortably own, and didn't necessarily rely on anything other than monthly recurring revenue and making sure that that they had their report updated and a plan each month. As we move to a consumption-based model, forecasting now, because of that variable component for consumption, is based off of product usage, which is more typically coming from a product analytics team and usually isn't an area that finance gets involved with. So we're building in these cross-functional steps where forecasting is now product analytics combined with finance, and planning is bringing sales and customer success in, because we've had to go from a strategy of selling subscriptions to now selling seat licenses. And not only are we bringing net new customers into a new pricing model, which is, again, a new strategy for our sales team, how do we migrate customers from existing subscriptions to a new pricing model that makes the most sense for our customers? That, again, requires customer success, our technical success managers, our technical solutions engineers, to understand what the value prop is for customers that need to migrate. And we can't operate in silos, because each one of these groups has relevant data points that can influence the value that we give our customers. So we're specifically building in these cross-functional steps to bring groups together, again, to bring this holistic picture of our customers going forward. And I think the second biggest thing for us, which again is playing off something Carmen said earlier, is 2021 is now where we're optimizing what we implemented in 2020. we're building in as much as we can the fact that we're not going to get stuff right the first time. Is we're not gonna measure churn correctly the first time. We're also not going to wait 6 months to be able to measure it perfectly. So we're going to build in iterative processes to say, here's a definition of churn, sales leadership, customer success leadership, finance. Does this make sense? Give folks something to react to, as opposed to waiting to get everything done perfectly and waiting for full alignment. So we're building in that iteration and agility to our analytic development processes.
Nice. Do you want to go ahead with that, Carmen?
Yeah, so planning for 2021, one of the key learnings that we had that plays into our planning for 2021 is a lot of the tools that are out there are not prepared for a usage-based model. So it has been a journey, a side-by-side journey with several of our platforms to adjust into a usage model and doing it side by side and learning together. So a great example of that is Clary. Clary is great with a bookings model, works off of an opportunity, but with a usage model and where you have evergreen subscriptions that are involved, they're still trying to figure out how that works within their world. And so we're actually partnering side by side with them to be not necessarily a guinea pig, but a partner in crime to understand how we're going to make that work and make that tool evolve with our particular model. And it's just been an outstanding key learning for us. And we're continuing to have to do this across almost all of our platforms, including our billing platform. So super jazzed and excited about that. And we're just going to get smarter as a result of that. They're going to get smarter and they're going to be able to help us be smarter as we make that evolution. Other changes for us in 2021 is we've got a limited amount of data set. So we're having to be super prescriptive about getting key learnings out of that data set since we went live with a usage-based model, and being able to really litmus test those key findings before we put them into a full year model. So we're being iterative in our model for 2021, which is great. Which gives us an indication that we can shift and evolve as we can begin to have more data and learn more about our customers and our prospects' behavior. And then the other part for planning for 2021 is we are, that forecasting piece of the equation is a bit tough right now, just because we're still in that learning phase. So continuing to dial in on that and get more predictive around our usage. And that's one of the pieces that we're working on right now, is learning about our customers and identifying those customers that have potential to grow, because expansion is the name of the game in 2021 for us at Fivetran. It's not only the land, it's also helping our customers realize and utilize the full value that Fivetran has to offer to them, and making that as easy as possible for them. So that's what we've got on board for 2021. Financial planning, all of that is not super easy right now, but we're building the foundation so that it will be for us moving forward. I'm super jazzed and excited about 2021, if you can't tell.
I'll pick up on one point you mentioned there, Carmen. That's the prescriptiveness. Is we're going through, I think, very similar to Fivetran, we're going from more of a sales-led model to a product-led growth model. And there's a lot of data that's available. There's a lot of things that you can potentially look at. And one of the areas of focus for my analytics team in 2021 is to go from the, say, 100 different data points that are out there to really focusing and narrowing what are the 5 that matter. Because you can do 100 things kind of decently or very poorly, or you can do 5 things really well. And the focus for us is to identify what those 5 things we should care about are, and also what to do about it. So it's not just here's your data, here's a data dump. It's here's what we're finding, and here's what you should go do about it. We had
I think that's super important, because it's not, we had the same learning where it's not necessarily, yes, we've got the insight into the data now, that's step 1, but it's what are the actions or the levers that are going to really drive or influence us, which are going to be different than they were in the past. And then also making those key decisions around it. Building that confidence and that muscle around the key decisions is another piece that we're starting to build more memory and more muscle around.
And Kara, that gets back to your first point about a tech stack too, is that when you want to have someone go do something or make a decision with data you see, you need to have the tools in place to be able to do so. Because again, you don't want to end up in a world where everything's managed in Google Sheets or an Excel sheet and it's manual process back and forth. You want to be able to have the right tooling in place to be able to go from data to insight to action in as seamless a way as possible.
Yeah, and throughout the entire funnel too. I apologize.
That's okay. I will actually ask a follow-up question that I'm interested in. I think, and maybe some other people are thinking this, you know, you look at financial planning for 2021 and maybe you expected like the CFO to talk or like the head of finance, but we're talking heavily about product analytics here and product usage and changing of our pricing models. So was that kind of transition from this being like, you know, a finance world to it turning into really heavily focused on product and that how that intertwines with finance? Was that like a natural transition with the usage-based pricing, or kind of like how do those discussions come up where there's like this click of, okay, this all goes really like together?
That's a great question. I would say because we're going product-led growth, it is more heavily inclusive of product than it has before. And I think when you look at New Relic earnings calls, you'll see Bill Staples, our CPO, talking more around financial planning than he has previously, because consumption run rate and consumption-based pricing is a lot different than subscriptions. I would say the biggest shift for us is really less focus on a revenue number, even though that's what is reported out to investor relations and stuff, and more focused on value. So in a product-led growth initiative, strategy, you want to fundamentally understand what value your customers are getting from your products, and that is highly correlated with how they're using your product. So I think that's the natural transition that New Relic has made, to go from just an ARR number that assumes a value proposition for customers to more of an explicit statement of what value our customers get. And we would see increasing value from increasing consumption and thus higher revenue numbers from our consumption-based pricing.
I will tell you it's an evolution. It's been an evolution here at Fivetran from a very sales-centric sales environment to a sales environment that truly encompasses the entire funnel. So it's what message are we sending out to potential prospects and also existing customers about our products and services and how to leverage them, to the prospect journey, to an adoption journey. So making sure that the folks that we've brought on board are actually using our service and are realizing the value out of the service. And then that customer's journey post-sales. And where I think from a financial planning perspective, that conversation used to be just the bookings conversation. And now it's the entire life cycle conversation. So it is a very collaborative journey, and we need every single piece of the team members in each one of those pieces of our business to be on truly one team, one dream for us as an organization in order to be successful. We need to be on the same page, running in the same direction. And that is a product, that's engineering, that's marketing, that's sales, and that's CS. That's everybody. And so that's been the shift in conversation. I don't know if it's just been a product specific shift, but it's been a shift as an entire organization. And not saying that we've done it perfectly, but I will tell you I'm awfully proud of what we've been able to accomplish as an organization within a very short period of time. And I think that we are setting our customers up for success, and we're also setting up our product for success, and we're also setting Fivetran up for success. again, super jazzed and excited about what the future brings.
I'm glad that you're excited. However, I'm sure there will be challenges going into the future. So for both of you, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges that companies are going to face as they're planning for not just 2021, but also beyond? Yeah, I'm interested in the answer for this one.
Go ahead, Erik.
A couple come to mind because I'm living them right now. One is that, again, my team's product analytics, and the skill set that we had in 2020, 2019 didn't require really a good grasp of our pricing model. We looked primarily at product engagement and what our users are doing. So one of the challenges that I'm excited to face in 2021 is the fact that we now, in a consumption-based pricing world, need to understand our pricing model, need to understand where our finance and pricing data is. We're getting into forecasting, which we haven't done before. We're getting into financial planning, which we hadn't done before. So these are new areas of focus for a team that hasn't had to focus on them before. Mm-hmm. And because those are new areas, it's new data sets. Like we figured out how we could make sense of our Zora schema and what customers are being charged. So this knowledge doesn't just live with a person in finance now. It's now available to anyone who's interested in the company. So we've had to overcome the challenge of new skills and new analytic models and methodologies that we haven't had to use before, in addition to new types and new sets of data that we've never looked at.
Yeah.
I think our biggest challenge has been the transformation, the mindset shift of the entire organization out of a bookings model and a sales-driven model into a usage model. And everybody getting comfortable with what that framework is, what the key measurements of success are, getting visibility into it, and then creating action that is going to help drive our new metrics of success. So I think that's been one of the biggest challenges and will be a challenge for us moving into 2021 as well. And then keeping it simple. So usage is complex, and it is. It's the nature of the beast. Folks can get really distracted by lots of different things. And so the goal here is just to keep it as simple as possible, and then not allow the complexities of usage drive us, but instead our simplified actions and data points and keeping focused on the things that truly matter, really driving our usage. And so that's going to be another challenge. And then the third challenge is going to be all of this new data provides opportunities for making decisions. So as we scale, it's just being clear about decision making and who owns decisions so that we continue to make really point in time decisions that are also thoughtful for the business as we continue to scale and grow. So those are the three things that are on my mind. And then from a data perspective, just making sure that we continuously iterate on our data on a daily, if not like literally on a daily basis, and that we continue to learn as quickly as we possibly can so we can overcome the hurdles and we can act on the learnings that we're learning.
Nice. And kind of going into the last section, it all kind of, runs into each other, but we're going to go into some best practices and advice type talk here. So how can businesses ensure that their finance analytics are informing every other part of the organization? So whether that's the people you have to have conversations with or how you kind of break down those internal silos.
I'll start on this one. I think one of the best practices that we've learned into, we didn't get it right from the start, was the enablement piece. Is that, data or analysis or stories that are told in silos don't really work when the business model you have necessitates cross-functional collaboration and the entire funnel, as Carmen said. So I think one of the best practices is a focus on enablement for the organization so that decisions can be informed by data across multiple functions or across multiple areas. The other one that that we again learned our way into is iterative mindset, is being okay with not getting it right the first time, but building into your process the ability to iterate and, as Carmen said, learn quickly. A lot of decisions we have to make very fast, and you know, a daily update of a data model, as Carmen said, is something that we've gone through multiple times. We've gone through multiple iterations. So being okay with that agile mindset, that you're going to iterate, you might not get it right the first time, but learn quickly and iterate quickly is something that we've implemented and hope to continue to implement going forward.
Nice.
Three pieces, I think for me, our finance team, I love them. Make sure that you've got FP&A or you've got enough finance structure to help you with being able to work through the financial planning piece of the equation. We tended to be very lean and mean in that area. And this is a time when you're going through this transition where you just need that extra firepower. So I would just encourage you to make sure you've got the right amount of resources in the right areas in order to help you make any sort of a big transition or change, just so that you've got your bases covered. Second piece is change management. So I can't understate, and I think you all know what that looks like and feels like within your organizations, but change management is just foundational when you're going through so much change. And in our case, everything had to change to support our new pricing structure. Our billing model, the systems that we use to support our people, the way that we quoted, the way that we did forecasting on pipeline, territories, our roles and responsibilities, our structure, just everything within our organization needed to shift. And just the ability to prepare folks, not only from a sales structure, but just as an org to make this adjustment, I think is just absolutely critical. And then third, your analytics. I cannot stress enough about bringing your analytics team along on the journey and helping them be in front of your changes that you're going to be making. So speaking to that collaborative piece of the equation, the analytics side of the house was behind the change versus being in front of the change. And so if I can just share that little bit of wisdom along the way, I think that would help any of you as you make any sort of structure. Try to bring them in early and often and try to get them in front of the change as much as possible.
Great. And then kind of, you know, predicting, seeing into the future, what do you think will be some big trends next year in terms of like financial planning, financial analytics, maybe how it relates to your product analytics, really anything that you're kind of been thinking about?
I think we're going to, again, this is from the consumption-based framework, but it's also increasingly true in a non-consumption-based framework. I think financial planning is going to continue to increasingly use data outside of just revenue, that it will be informed by usage, it will be informed by the number of support tickets a customer submit, that financial planning in general is going to continue to be more inclusive of data outside of just revenue and revenue forecasting.
I would agree. It's a much more collaborative process than it ever has been before, and I highly encourage all of the different points of view that come into it. And you're still understanding your levers, at least in our stage. But the more data endpoints, both subjective and objective, that you can put into the model, the stronger you're going to be. So definitely collaborative. I think one of the other things that we all are going to be facing is impact of remote. So impact of a remote sales staff, impact of just remote, or the impact of pandemic if we get through it in 2021. I don't think any of us have a real good sense of what that looks like and feels like, so that's a little bit of an unknown. And then the third piece of the equation is just this continual shift to usage and what that means as more organizations make that change to a usage-based model. The customer is so important. And so that customer-centric and product, making sure that the product is tied to the customer's needs and the customer's value, I think is going to be 100% of our success as we move forward as an organization. So those are the
Nice.
things that are on my mind.
Excellent. And then I guess we'll move on to the Q&A. So for anyone listening, if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the question box. But I think to start, we'll say, what tools do you recommend to other businesses to help with financial planning? So for you guys, what are like the top hitters there?
I will say that being able to run all, if not some of your financial planning out of a data warehouse. So for us, it's Fivetran to be able to pull Zora or NetSuite or revenue recognition data into a warehouse and being able to run your financial planning out of a warehouse. It's allowed the last two companies I've worked at to scale financial planning much more quickly and effectively than if it wasn't the case. A warehouse, Snowflake is my preferred one. So a warehouse to be able to house your data and run financial planning out of. Fivetran, because we have used it to bring all necessary connector data into our warehouse. And then I haven't used this personally, but Sigma Computing is a tool that I've seen as a nice middle layer between a warehouse and maybe your ultimate visualization. It allows for an Excel-like interface to be able to interact with data in a warehouse for someone that might not be as familiar with SQL as a typical data analyst. So those are the three: Fivetran, Snowflake, and then I think Sigma is a tool that is increasingly being used for scalable planning and scalable analytics in an Excel-like way.
Nice.
We're very similar, but we're BigQuery, and then we use Looker. Fivetran, we eat our own dog food, so we use it on a daily basis all the time. And then for Sigma, that's our ad hoc tool, and it is so until we decide that something's been stacked hands on and should go into Looker, that's the tool that we use to really do a lot of our ad hoc analysis.
Nice. And then you also mentioned, Carmen, that you're bringing on Clary. Are there any other tools that you're adding into your stack this year, like in terms of just like applications or anything like that?
No, I did most of my tech stack implementation last year. Nice. So just optimization with our overall tech stack to both support a global footprint versus just North America, because we're also expanding in EMEA and APAC. So just making sure that our tech stack is relevant for the other parts of our business. And then I think that's the biggest one. We've had to fine tune the way that we work with our tool stack to make sure that it supports our revenue. So like I said, with Clary, they prefer a bookings model and an opportunity model versus a usage model for helping with the forecasting piece of the equation. And so just partnering with folks to help them along on that journey, and then also making sure that we get the data that we need in the format that we need.
Nice. And then do you have any resources you recommend? So I think anything like Slack groups, websites that you go to often, any sort of like ways you educate yourself on the topic?
I am so I hadn't done financial analytics a lot in previous jobs. It's been increasing then recently, and then at New Relic has really taken on a new life of its own. I follow Daniel McCarthy on LinkedIn. He's a professor at Emory. He does a lot around customer lifetime value modeling. But what he's talked about recently is because his work has been adopted for IPOs. He's talked about different ways to look at cohort analysis, different ways to look at growth in your company and the unit economics of your business. So I think Daniel McCarthy, Peter Fader for customer centricity. I follow those two, and then anyone that likes them on LinkedIn or comments on them, I then follow them. So I kind of go down the path of starting with the two that I know, and then following where that leads me.
Very good.
I
Carmen.
network quite a bit, and so a lot of folks within Fivetran find value in other points of view. And so we all are encouraged, and this is just something that I do naturally anyways, is reach out to peers. So our friend LinkedIn is a good friend, or just even talking to folks within your organization saying, hey, can you connect me with other folks within other organizations similar to ours, so that I can spend time with them, ask them questions, and learn. And so I do that. I set aside time on a weekly basis to just do that. And then I continue to connect with these folks, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it. If you reach out to peers in other companies similar to yours, I have yet to have somebody say no to spending time with you. And nothing is better than just real live situation and just saying, hey, this is the situation I'm running into. Do you have any thoughts or feedback, or have you seen this before? And folks are very, very open. So that's one avenue. And then I'm also part of a group called the Revenue Operations Collective Group. It has a lot of folks that are either sales or operations mindsets or finance mindset, just who are want to learn more, gain community network, but also get answers around what tech stack should I be using, or I'm thinking about this particular tool. Have you heard anything about that? Mm-hmm. So it's a great resource. I use it fairly often, and happy to talk more about it. But those are my two go-tos.
That's awesome.
I'll go the networking one, because it often seems like when your company makes a big change, you can be on an island, and like, how do you figure this out? This is an impossible challenge to tackle. And I'd say with close to 100% certainty, there are other companies or other people that have gone through or are going through the exact same thing. And reaching out to peers who have done it before or are going through the same thing, it removes you from that island you might feel you're on, like you're the only one that has to figure this out on your own.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That is me all the time. And it's also comforting to see it. It's like, okay, it's not just me. Well, we are at time. That went super quick, but thank you so much, Erik and Carmen, for joining us today for this conversation. And for any questions we didn't get to, we'll try to get back to you after. But thank you so much, and everyone, enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.